Sports professor Rick Horrow saw the $1.3 trillion business of sports, and it couldn't come at a better time. Texas Rangers have been okay, mediocre for years. That's not a bad thing, but now they have a ballpark, not only the jewel of Texas and Major League Baseball, but they have a team on the field maybe to match it, and a guy who's responsible for much of that, EVP for business ops for the Texas Rangers, Rob Matwick. Was that okay? Did I screw that introduction up? Did I give you too much credit?
I think you did great. Obviously, a lot of people involved there, but I appreciate the kind comments.
Well, Rob, of course, it's a team effort. And, look, you've been in Major League Baseball or in baseball proper 38 years. It's a lot of time. You probably know more about the inner workings of baseball than a lot of people. I'll hit you with a kind of a perception question out of the box first before going into your career. What's the one thing that's changed the most from when you got into Major League Baseball in the first place in 1985 when Dick Wagner called you to today?
Wow, that's a great question. It'd be easy to say pace of play because that certainly has been a big differentiator this year across our industry. So it's probably the most significant change that I've seen to the game, certainly in the time I've been in it, if not the entire time that I've been watching it, which has been my entire life. So that's been a big one. It's been interesting to see how players have evolved, how teams, particularly on the front office side, have evolved over time, have become more sophisticated in terms of our approach to business. Interesting now to see franchise valuations growing the way they have. Teams now looking at sports anchor development like we have here in Arlington, but not only here, but we're even working with some smaller communities that want to use baseball as a nucleus for development in their community. So it's really been a paradigm shift in terms of facilities that were just surrounded by parking lots. You came to the game, you parked the car, came to the game, got in your car, and went home. Now everyone's looking for the experience. So I think we're all focused on that now and trying to, create those lifelong fans, but even give the casual fans that opportunity to experience something more when they come to the ballpark.
And we'll talk about Texas Live in a couple of minutes and Arlington Live. But obviously that template is very important, whether it's Camden Yards or the Ballpark Village or anything in between in all sports. So obviously you start and everybody needs a break. Tell us the story of 1985 and Dick Wagner calling you. Was it a wrong number? What the hell happened?
Might have been. Might have been in retrospect. I was working in college athletics. I was the SID at Wichita State. Interestingly, I worked for an athletic director, a gentleman named Lou Perkins, who happened to be my college basketball coach at the University of South Carolina at Aiken for the last 2 years of my career there. I took an extra year to finish my undergrad degree, and Lou sort of had me learning at his feet as a student SID. But long story short, I went to work for the Shockers, and I had, unbeknownst to me, I'd been given, Dick had been given my name by a few people in the industry who he knew, people who worked in college athletics. In 1985, the Astros had gone through a period of having had 3 different media relations directors over the course of that season. So Dick came in as a new president and general manager and said that he was looking for someone on the college level who he could bring in and sort of teach the game, if you will, and learn the business. So he reached out to a few friends that he knew that had some connections to college athletics. My name apparently came up from a couple of those folks. 2 of them, at least, I had never met personally, but I'd worked with their assistants. And long story short, it led to a phone call on a Sunday night in September of 1985 with a guy who identified himself as Dick Wagner. And he said, you don't know me, but I think I have a job you might be interested in.
Well, and I guess the advice so you were there for 20 years, obviously. Look at all the titles. It's media, and then it's ballpark ops, and you know everything about everything relative to the Astros. And you've done the same thing with the Rangers, with a little stint with the Tigers. But I guess my general question is, when someone at a higher level asks you to do a job, you say yes. You're not going to say you're not qualified, right? You learn how to do that job and you move on. Is that kind of right?
One of my mentors is a lady named Pam Gardner, who was our president of business operations with the Astros, and she was our VP of marketing before that. But when we were in the construction process at Minute Maid Park, transitioning out of the Astrodome, I remember early on in that process, we didn't have a big front office at that time, and she asked me to go to a couple of meetings for her. And she said, just go, take notes, and if they ask you a question you don't know the answer, that's okay. Just come back and we'll figure it out. We spent 4 years just figuring it out. And I think that's sort of been my mantra throughout my career here. You never want to be the smartest guy in the room, right? If you are, they tell me you're in the wrong room. So you always want to be able to learn and absorb from other people. But, when we put our minds together collectively and try to problem solve, there's nothing that we can't figure out or find a way. And I think that's one of the great things about our business too, is the collaboration.
Well, you sure as hell figured it out, and obviously you're somebody who I guess it counts with the Tigers a little bit, but between your collective Astros and Rangers experience in Minute Maid and Globe Life, you pretty much cornered the market on process. Was your experience at Minute Maid, did it make it easier or harder to do Globe Life? Were you more of a perfectionist, or did you anticipate everything coming down the pipe?
From my perspective, I think it made it much easier because it's a process that most of us might get an opportunity to go through once. I mean, a lot of teams will do renovations to facilities, but to actually start from scratch, to sit in a room with designers and architects and have a programming meeting where they tell you, hey, just blue sky, given anything you could have in here, what would you want? And to get that, not just from me, but across everybody in the organization, everyone had that opportunity to contribute their thoughts to the original programming. And that document was over 600 pages long by the time it was done. So to take that collection of thoughts, if you will, and then to take that back to a design studio and begin to turn that into actual architecture, but not just the architecture, but the operational aspects of it is pretty unbelievable. So having gone through it previously in Houston, I think helped me to prepare. And I think it helped me to coach others in the organization who had not gone through the process. There are times too, there's always a little bit of tension in that creative process between the architect and the operators. And I've told this to other organizations that have reached out to us. I said, don't ever let anyone, nobody knows more about your business than you do. There are times when decisions have to be made and they're not always easy. And, our project, we spent a little bit more on our project than we had intended to. But I think the end product is sort of the proof in the pudding based on now the revenue we're able to generate here, the types of events that we can do in the building. It has already borne itself out, and I know it will continue to do that over time. I think that's probably the biggest thing for the Rangers. I think as great as the ballpark in Arlington was, as we sit here in the midst of an early summer heat dome over North Texas, and the start of a homestand, we've all been lamenting how challenging it would have been to have had a great homestand in the outdoor venue here, but we're so much more flexible and nimble in this building.
I'm starting a hashtag. Thank God for the air conditioning and roof. The hashtag, whatever the social media does, we're going to do that. So you mentioned collaboration, which is interesting. And by the way, you get high marks too, and this is not being gratuitous. It goes the other way. When you talk to a lot of the architects, sometimes they run into meetings beginning of the week with owners. Say, we don't want to deal with these people. We can't. The HKS people, find you collaborative, easy to understand, the vision. And I guess it's inspiring to work with someone who makes some suggestions, but designs a building from the revenue out, from the fan experience out, and doesn't just take a cookie cutter, but working with you on how to maximize your business.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to one of my colleagues here today, and he's now president of our River Entertainment Group, is a young guy named Sean Decker. And Sean, at that time, when we started the programming process for Globe Life Field, was our VP of ballpark operations. So he'd done events, then he sort of came over and was working with me on ops. And I think we were really fortunate to have someone like Sean with us at the beginning, because he had a really good feel and understanding for how we might be able to do events better if we took into consideration some things that we did in Globe Life Field. So he was an important collaborator, and certainly our sales team and partnerships team, all contributed thoughts, and the great Chuck Morgan from the ballpark entertainment side of things, in terms of, how we would present the game of baseball to fans. But then we were always looking for other ways, how can we make the building functional 365 days a year? And, we've talked about it a lot now that in many ways, the decision to go with a synthetic grass surface, the ability to cover that, retract our mound, reinforcing steel on the roof so that we can rig our speaker arrays from the roof as opposed to angling up and deflecting a lot of sound off of steel in the upper levels. Just little decisions like that have allowed us to, take the events business to the next level without sacrificing, the quality of our baseball experience for our players and for our fans.
Now, I know also from following kind of the architectural history and the development history, you had a firm work with you that was successful in Indianapolis and Minneapolis and just doing SoFi and obviously AT&T across the street.
Yeah.
And I assume it's best practices. I assume it goes both ways. They bring some ideas to you and you react to them.
No doubt. They had some very specific thoughts about how to generate more revenue in the building. We've got multiple levels of suites, not only at the edge of the field, but I really like the level that we created about 20 rows up, sort of on our lower concourse, a level of suites there. It's funny, we've toured just in the past few weeks here. We've had 2 teams from Japan that have visited us. And Hakoto, the Ham Fighters, actually opened their new ballpark this spring.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sports Grid.
Oh my God, dude! A guy on the Steelers caused the fumble. He ran into him.
Crucify him! Crucify him! The kick is the kick's good. Red zone went out for a second there. It could have caused some severe damage to Scott's face if we didn't get to see the highlight.
In-game live all access, only on Sports Grid.
But the Bengals offense, Warren, yesterday, and most importantly, I saw Burrow scrambling a little bit. Now, I know Jamar Chase was a monster in this game.
He's not going to take off and scramble left and right, but he is going to buy the time in the pocket and get to a better position or get to a better throwing lane, throwing window. And he does that a lot, and he couldn't do that the first month of the season, but he was able to do that this past week.
Newswire, only on Sports Grid. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy
The early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
late
good betting.
night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid
We
for
did.
information. Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Let's talk about Globe Life for a minute. I'm only 38 years old, but I look like I'm 9,040. And these are not easy to do. The fact that you had a 60-40 vote on a Globe Life referendum with a beautiful building next door that may have made it easier for the Cowboys, and then esports and all of the other things they did. But also, your building was great. It wasn't roofed. It had capacity issues and point of sale issues. But one of the hardest things to do when you're doing one of these is to make your building that you currently play in look and feel antiquated enough where people would understand and vote for a new building. What say you on that?
Well, it's a fair point, and it's hard to sit here and think that we would spend $1.2 billion just to solve the weather issue. Right. But in many ways, from a baseball standpoint, we did. But we did do that. We've given ourselves the flexibility to still play baseball outdoors, certainly April, May, and we hope to have some October baseball outside.
Yeah, you do.
We hope so. But we also created a tremendous training facility for our players. North Texas, we all believe that, it's a great place for players to live. And, we want our players to be here year round, but we needed a facility that could equal that. For a number of years at Globe Life Park, we had players that in the winter could come in and lift weights in our facility, but we would go to high school facilities, indoor high school football facilities in the area so that they could do their long toss and their running, just because typically the field in the winter here was covered, to protect the roots of the grass. So it really was limiting in terms. So, we didn't have many players that lived in the Metroplex, but now that we can provide this year-round training facility here, it sort of extended our reach from that standpoint. They can get on the field in January, take BP now, and run and throw and do all the things they need to do to get ready to go to Arizona.
And it's not clear. It's clearly not as simple as putting a cover on a building. All of the other events that you can generate because you're retractable, and that gives you 24-hour, 365-day capability. Give us an idea of the kinds of events, if you have a net number for the last year or two, and what it means as far as economic impact as well.
I think the average on that has been over 250 meetings and private events. Of course, we have a really significant preseason college baseball tournament. We've done college wrestling the past 2 years. We've hosted the Big 12 baseball championship here for the past 2 years, and we hope to get ready to extend that agreement here soon. We've had conversations looking at maybe a basketball opportunity, probably on the college level. We've had some conversations with our partners over at the Stars. We would love to get maybe a stadium series game here. Of course, the Cotton Bowl hosted the Big Winter Classic a few years ago. It was fantastic. But, then you start to look at all the other things that are out there, the concert business, the WWE type opportunities. Now that we have this type of indoor arena environment, if you will, or can create that opens the door to all those opportunities. So, our team created we did the Army Air Force football game for the past 2 years. So, we've proven we can do football. The college baseball tournament and the Big 12 tournament have been fantastic. Done a number of high school baseball games too, and high school football here. So, no limits.
So relative to the extended experiences, you bring events in from out of town. You also create events, and that means a lot to the bottom line.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really has been. And I think that's the job that the Rev team has really done with content creation. They, the meeting business here is pretty much nonstop. Like I say, it's averaging more than 250 non-baseball events per year. And that's everything from, our foundation gala this year is a great example. We literally did a 1,300 person event on the field with Kenny Chesney the night before a Rangers home game. We finished the Big 12 baseball tournament, on a Sunday typically. Last year we played baseball on Monday. This year we had a day off on the Monday, but without damaging our field, which is always the concern on a grass field when you have that many games over a short amount of time. But we're able to do that seamlessly, with the surface and with the facility we have here at Globe Life Field.
All right, so it's $1.1 billion, $1.2 billion, and you get the vote done, and you clear the ground, and you expedite construction, and you're all excited, and you're ready for March 2020. So Rudy Gobert goes down to Oklahoma City, and he tests positive, and then all hell breaks loose. But yet you recover, and you not only survive and thrive, but you hold the World Series between the Rays and the Dodgers there in the bubble. And if that doesn't validate Major League Baseball's trust in your building, nothing does. Talk about that.
Well, it was interesting because, we were 3 days away from the Chris Stapleton show, and that was going to be the first event here in the ballpark. And I was actually driving home listening to the Mavericks game, and Chuck Cooperstein came on and said, hey, there's a delay in the Oklahoma City game tonight. Not quite sure what that is. I remember Chuck saying, but I immediately got on my cell phone in the car, called John Blake and said, hey, have you heard about this delay up in Oklahoma City tonight? We better pay attention to this. I remember when I got to the house, I turned the TV on, and there was that shot of Mark Cuban looking at his phone, with that shock in his face. And here we go. But it's interesting. We pivoted to high school graduations, and we did 64 high school graduations that year because we could distance people in our stand. So, the state helped us, the county, the city in terms of health department, and we literally went in and tie wrapped seats so that guests couldn't sit, within 6 feet of one another. So we were in that process that spring of trying to prove that we could safely host events here. And to your point, when decision was finally made to continue the season without fans, which was the right thing to do that summer.
Yeah.
We started the press and convinced Major League Baseball that we could host a neutral site World Series with a limited number of fans to do it safely. And, you talk about collaboration and cooperation. I mean, from health department to fire department, police, our guest service staff, our Ranger staff, everybody pitching in to make that event happen. And, it was not the way we wanted the first World Series championship to be crowned on our field. Happy for the Dodgers, but, we're looking forward to the Rangers experiencing that same thing here soon.
There you go. Well, we won't ask you for a prediction, but do you still have one or two of those cardboard cutouts that are infamous of a few years ago? Everybody seems to forget. You don't have them?
No,
oh,
I don't want anything to do with them.
That is so disappointing. Yeah, it's probably it's like bad karma. But in all seriousness, when you look at the history of the Roaring 20s and how Yankee Stadium had some significant public assistance, old Yankee Stadium in 1919 as a recovery from the Spanish flu pandemic, there are a lot of retrospective values of how a new facility and dollars not only can generate economic recovery after a pandemic, but also can kind of talk about making things safe in a mass spectator environment, which I'm sure was important to you too.
Absolutely was. I mean, there were a ton of protocols, and Mike Healy and Mike does our venue operations and guest service here, and fantastic operator. And we did I think we did a good job of documenting everything we were doing and shared our experiences with our industry. And in some ways, I like to think that helped with our slow return in 2021. So we spent a lot of time and effort in documenting everything we were doing. And like I said, I can't tell you how many calls we fielded from other clubs just about how we were dealing with things. And then we also worked with the Department of Defense, and we hosted a vaccination site here too. Yeah. So when you talk about trying to help with that recovery, we were honored to do that. It was great to have, we had soldiers and sailors that were here and actually manning those locations. And they loved being at the ballpark. It really turned out to be a really cool experience. We actually did a couple of promotion ceremonies for them on the field while they were here, because we had a couple of their officers that were promoting up, and it was fantastic.
It's basically a true public purpose in every sense of the word. So just a couple more questions about economics broadly. Owners of teams don't like these Sportico or these Forbes valuations unless you're at the top, and then the Steinbrenners will talk about the $7 billion and say, yeah, that's right. But at the end of the day, you're kind of in the middle. It's about $2.3 billion, and it's only important if someone's going to sell, and nobody's doing it. Right. But at the end of the day, you feel like a top tier team now, not only because of your market and because of your performance, but because of Globe Life and Texas Live and the surrounding real estate, right?
No doubt about it. And we certainly do perceive ourselves as a large market team. In fact, we have the biggest single team market, in the country. You look at Chicago and LA and San Francisco. I mean, New York, obviously 2 team markets, but we sit here in the middle of the Metroplex. We're in a great position. our 5-state region, if you look at the population of the areas around us, I mean, it definitely, we definitely are a large market team. So, but I do agree with you. I think we've given ourselves that opportunity now to have this boost in revenue generation, and certainly our partnership with the Cordish companies on Texas Live has been great. They manage that facility for us, and we were very excited when we saw Ballpark Village and visited the other Cordish facilities around the country, particularly St. Louis and Kansas City. We thought those were the ones that were most relevant to us. So in addition to Texas Live, we've added the hotel properties now, and we're partnering with the Cordish companies on a residential facility that is now coming up out of the ground.
So obviously big market team, big market aspirations. What is the sense of how the Rangers then parlay the mixed use development and Globe Life and everything around it? Let's say 5 years from now, what does the whole complex look like 5 years from now?
Well, that's a great question. We know for sure that the new Lowe's Arlington, the Convention Center, the National Medal of Honor Museum, and One Rangers Way, which is our first foray into residential, will all be open. So 5 years from now, that phase of construction will be behind us. I would assume that if leasing goes well on the One Rangers Way project, which is 300 luxury apartment units, that you could expect that we might consider more residential, because we think that's one of the pieces that's missing here. In 5 years, it'll be interesting to see where Choctaw Stadium is. We're certainly excited about the return of the XFL. We hope that the XFL will have a longer shelf life under the leadership of Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson. So we hope that will continue in Choctaw. And then we've started to look at some other opportunities actually in the face of that building that we're working on potentially developing now. So I think you can see more residential. I do think we'll do some continued development in Choctaw Stadium, and then our current partners with XFL Rugby, North Texas Soccer, and some high school football in terms of the rectangular games on the field. Hopefully those will continue, but if not, then we'll have to pivot to some other opportunity there. So we're always looking for ideas.
All right, Rob. Last question. You did it in Houston. You did it in Arlington. Where are you going next?
Nowhere, I hope. I've been very fortunate. To quote the great Vin Scully, I'm an ordinary man who's been given an extraordinary opportunity. And, I've been so blessed to be able to work in baseball as long as I have, and really sports for my entire career, that I wouldn't trade a day of it now. It's fun that I have a 21-year-old daughter who's actually finishing her junior year at the University of Texas in Austin as a journalism major, interested in the podcast business. So while she hasn't really expressed interest in going into sports, she's very interested in this form of communication. So it's fun to watch her grow and see the opportunities before her. Every time I talk to an intern or a young person that tells me I help them on their career path, I'm quick to remind them that I have a daughter too, and someday I'm going to make a call and ask them for that same favor. So we'll see where it goes.
Well, you've done a great favor for Arlington. You've done a great favor for the Rangers. And you tell your daughter that you did okay in this interview. By the way, you've been fine. Rob Matwick, really appreciate your time. Rick Horrow, speak with you soon.